Ever get that feeling like you're being watched, controlled, maybe even a little dumbed down?
Yeah, Muse tapped into that big time with Uprising.
It's not just a stadium rocker.
It's practically a thesis.
On rebellion.
Set to a killer beat.
And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're unpacking a song that's, on its surface, incredibly catchy.
But underneath, Muse is grappling with these huge themes about power, truth, fighting back against the man.
Ideas that resonate across cultures and throughout history.
Right. And we're lucky enough
to have two different Russian translations of Uprising.
to explore how those nuances shift in another language.
So if you've ever wondered how a song about fighting the power translates in a place that's, well, known for powerful figures,
You're in for a treat.
it really highlights how music can be this incredible bridge between languages and cultures. But even with the best translations, there are always layers of meaning that might get lost or transformed along the way.
Okay, let's unpack this. Right out of the gate, Uprising hits you with this wave of paranoia.
They will not force us. Who's they? What are they trying to force?
Muse isn't giving us names.
Oh.
And that just adds to the mystery.
Exactly. It's like they're tapping into this primal fear of the unknown, of forces working behind the scenes to control our lives.
And that fear isn't new. Think back to ancient myths about shadowy figures controlling fate.
Or even just the very human instinct to find patterns and explanations for things we don't understand.
An Uprising doesn't just stop at this vague sense of unease, right? Muse gets specific.
With lines like, they'll try to push drugs, keep us all dumbed down.
Which, let's be honest, feels incredibly relevant right now.
We're bombarded with information, but how much of it is designed to manipulate us? To keep us distracted, divided?
It's that age-old tactic. Control through confusion.
But in the digital age?
It's taken on a whole new level of sophistication.
It's like Muse is singing about that nagging feeling you
Look,
get.
you scroll through social media for like an hour, you know?
That one where you're not sure what's real anymore.
Precisely.
And that feeling of being manipulated.
Of having our minds messed with.
That's where that killer line about green belts comes in.
With all the green belts wrapped around our minds.
It's such a vivid image, but what does it actually mean?
Right.
It's one of those lyrics you can really get lost in.
Are we talking about literal green belts?
Like some kind of environmental metaphor.
Yeah, or
Is it something more abstract, something to do with...
the way our thoughts are controlled.
That's the beauty of poetic language.
It's open to interpretation.
But that's also what makes translating lyrics so tricky
Because how do you capture those multiple layers of meaning?
in another language.
Well, let's talk about how our two Russian translators tackled this whole greenbelt conundrum.
It seems like they both went for a more metaphorical approach.
But they made some fascinating choices.
Right. Pavel Kushinov in his translation.
He keeps the greenbelt imagery.
But he emphasizes the feeling of being tied down, restricted.
He uses the phrase zelenými pojasami zatenitými vokruг naszego rozuma.
Which literally means green belts tightened around our minds.
Okay, so that still has that sense of something external being
Yeah.
imposed on us, something...
Preventing our minds from expanding freely.
Exactly. But then we have Vyacheslav Stednitsky's translation, which takes a really interesting turn.
Instead of green belts, he uses lesoparkovim zanyami oposivayushkimi nash razum.
Forest park zones encircling our minds.
Whoa. Okay, that changes the whole vibe.
It's less about being bound and restricted and more about being gently nudged in a certain direction.
Right.
It's like being subtly contained within the boundaries of a carefully manicured park.
You might not even realize you're fenced in because everything seems so pleasant and controlled.
That's such a chilling thought, actually.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder if Stednitsky picked up on a different layer of meaning in the song, right?
Like maybe to him, Uprising is less about overt oppression and more about the insidious ways we're manipulated.
Without even realizing it.
It's definitely something to consider. And it's a great example of how translation isn't just a matter of finding the right words, right?
It's about interpreting the feeling, the intention behind the original text.
It's like those two Russian translations, they're like two different movies based on the same book,
Same basic plot points.
but totally different vibes.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole exploration so fascinating.
We're not just looking at dictionary definitions here.
We're
huh?
looking at how these translators connected with the song on a deeper level.
And how their choices reflect their own interpretations of its message.
And speaking of connecting with the message,
Yeah.
let's talk about that chorus.
You know the one. It's practically hardwired into our brains at this point.
They will not force us. They will stop degrading us.
The way Muse structures those lines, musically, lyrically.
It's like this collective rallying cry.
You can almost hear stadiums chanting it in unison.
Right. And even when the music's not blasting, that message sticks with you. We will be victorious.
It's defiant, hopeful.
Almost like a mantra for overcoming any obstacle.
Which is fascinating because so much of Uprising is about feeling powerless, controlled, manipulated.
Yet the chorus flips the script.
And offers this incredible surge of empowerment.
It's like Muse is saying, yeah, the world's a mess. Powerful forces are trying to keep you down.
Yeah.
You're not alone. We can fight back. We will be victorious.
And that's the power of protest songs, isn't it?
They give voice to these raw,
Yeah.
sometimes uncomfortable emotions. Anger, frustration, fear.
But they also offer this sense of community, of shared purpose.
Of hope for a better future.
It's like Uprising gives us permission to acknowledge the darkness, but then choose to fight for the light.
And that's a message that translates across languages,
Yeah,
cultures, musical tastes.
It's universal.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the key takeaway is that Uprising is more than just a catchy song.
It's a reflection of those timeless anxieties about power and control that
Yeah.
we all grapple with.
But it's also a reminder that we have the power to question, to resist.
To raise our voices
Yeah.
and fight for a world where those anxieties don't have to rule our lives.
So next time you hear Uprising, think about what makes you want to rise up.
And how you can channel that energy into making the world a little bit brighter, a little
Honey.
bit freer.
And maybe just a little bit louder.